Hello everybody, Isamu Sushi here. I'm sorry I've been away from YouTube for a little while. Things have been kind of complicated, a lot going on. But I'm finally getting around to my cutaway video. So I did a cutaway on a quick set a little while back, blah, blah, blah. I had some people curious on how I did it just with hand tools. So bare minimum, you're going to need your lock, and I recommend getting at least 2 or possibly even 3. If you're going to do this to a very particular lock you have in mind, I recommend getting the exact same lock or as close to it as you can, brand new. Work on that first, figure out what you're going to do before you go to your original, because no matter what, you are probably going to screw one of them up. And it'll also give you a good idea on what you're up against as far as disassembling. Now, as far as tools needed, the bare minimum tools that I would be needing would be, I did use a Dremel, but the bare minimum would be a good hand file, good flat file. You're going to want a center punch, a metal punch, or an automatic punch just to get your marks for your drill. You're going to need a drill and a couple good drill bits. And then you're going to need a hacksaw or a Dremel. So you can actually do this with just a hacksaw. You're just going to have more filing as far as cleanup. Now, this is a number 1, a number 3, and a number 5. And they all use the same size rivets, give or take. But you can use the same size screw. Even this quick set back here uses roughly the same size rivets, and it does use the same size screw. So I have sizes here for you guys just to kind of give you an idea of what you're up against here. You're going to need a pin punch to punch the rivets out, a 1/8 or a 3mm for your non-imperials. The drill bit, 9/64 imperial or 4mm. And then generally I will go with another drill bit the same size as my punch. So a 1/8 drill bit or a 3mm drill bit. And then the screws I am using are number 4 machine screws, 440s. So number 4 screws, 40 threads per inch, or 2.5mm machine screws, standard thread, and whatever length you may need. Some things that came in handy as far as making these was some threaded rod, the same size I was going to use, so that I could spread the scales out, but then bring them back together and see how everything worked. So I got prices for you. I got everything else. I'm going to try to keep this video on, so it's short as possible, but I didn't want to make a 20-minute video with cutting and editing and all of that. So I went out and I just purchased a whole bunch of locks. So it cost me a whole lot of money. If you think I did a good job or you think I deserve it, please hit that thumbs up, share with your friends, and maybe even hit the subscribe button. Anyway, okay, so with that out of the way, how I start is basically, you can see on this one here, brand new untouched rivet here. I file it down until I get it as flat as possible without scratching it. Tape off my core so that my shavings don't go down in. Punch the center of that, and then drill it out. Now that's where it's almost completely drilled out. You can see it flared out the metal a little bit. And then this is what it looks like when it's completely drilled out as far as the rivet goes. So get it to this point on all 4 and you're in good shape. Now what I did to my pin punch is I modified the tip of my pin punch just a little bit. So there's my automatic spring punch. Carbide tip scribe comes in really handy. And I hope you can see the tip of this thing, but it's tapered ever so slightly and also rounded over on that tip. So you can see how I modified that. And the reason I do that is because after you get these pins drilled out, it's going to sit in there really nice, stays centered, and you can basically drive the pins pretty much all the way through. Once you get it this far, the pin's pretty much going to fall out, or you can just wiggle them out most of the time. I do recommend keeping these scales in order, and the reason being is because they get smashed and bent in certain ways when they rivet these together, and the rivets also get bent in weird angles to lock everything together. So I would recommend keeping everything in order, and you can actually see this one here has got a dent right here from another rivet coming down on top. That dented 5 full plates. This dent actually went into this plate here. So if I didn't keep them in order and stacked the exact same way, you would notice that when you put it back together. So I recommend keeping it in order and the scales oriented exactly the same as they are when you disassemble the lock. Now, how I do that is once you've drilled it all out, you can punch the majority of your pins out of there, but leave one of them there. Don't touch it. Now, once you start driving that, chances are this bottom plate won't come off yet, but be aware, you'll have your shackle spring underneath. That could fly off at any point once you relieve those rivets. It won't likely until you drive that down in. So what I do is I drive the 3, I start driving the 1. Once I get it started, take a screwdriver and just pop that right off. Get your spring out, get your core out of there. You can turn your actuator, drop your shackle out of there, and then basically you can get the last rivet out of there really easily, or you have a very easy to work with. Everything stays in order. So then what I do is when I scribe in the same place, exactly the same spot every time, every scale, with the exception of the very bottom one, because I'm not going to scribe the outside. So I pick my corner back where I'm not going to cut, and I'm going to scribe back there. Now, you're not going to know necessarily where you're not going to cut at first, so this might be trial and error. So keep your scribes, your markings as small as possible, maybe over here on the side where you know you'll keep some meat. And then I will scribe it and keep them in order. So number 1, number 2, and then I will generally slowly just drop that rivet out, or you can slowly just pop each slide off until you get that rivet loose enough. But generally speaking, I don't have my vise down here, but I just drive that through so I can slowly keep them in order, get them unstacked, get them all cleaned up. Then you can kind of put them back together. A lot of times I will use a cable tie like that to keep everything in the exact same order. However, they can rotate, so that's why I always scribe the same spot so I know which side's facing out. Now, once I get to that point, get it all cleaned up, I will generally put it back together, if I don't know what I'm doing yet, with a threaded rod or some screws that are extra long. That gives me some working room, like these ones here. We can just loosen these up. We can spread it out. We figure out where we are going to cut, how much wear you need to leave metal in. For instance, the ball bearings take up 4 scales. If I remove any more than 4 right there, or sorry, any more than 3, if I remove the 4th, those ball bearings will fall right out. If I was to, sorry, I should use one that's open. So with the ball bearings right down there, if I didn't leave something here roughly in the middle, if I only left one top and bottom, the ball bearings might have enough play to pop out and release the shackle. So I can't tell you how you're going to cut it, where you're going to cut it, how you're going to lay it out, because I don't know what lock you're doing. You're going to have to kind of figure that out on your own, especially if it's a laminated type, or if it has locking pawls instead of ball bearings. For instance, on your master locks, if you have this stop plate where it can only turn that 90 degrees on, built into the bottom plate, you can see here, stop points. Here, stop points. These are your ball bearing master locks. Any of them that just have that open core, it's going to stop on the inside. There's going to be a part on the locking pawls that can't allow it to turn any farther. And so these kind are going to have locking pawls. And that's going to be a whole different beast as far as you can see. No ball bearing down inside of there. It's kind of hard to see, but there is no ball bearing. There you go. There's the hasp, or sorry, actually, well, I can't remember. You get my point. So that's why I say get a couple locks, get things figured out on one. I did botch one already trying to figure it out. So far I've bought 4 number 1s, 5 number 1s, 2 number 5s, 3 number 3s, and all the hardware as well. Also, I botched one of my cores. So you see here, they crimped the cores. Now I was trying to turn the actuator to get the shackle out, and I bricked it. So you can see here they have it crimped. Now I had to basically cut each side of that. So crimp on each side. Had to cut, pop it off, file that down until I got to that notch on the core, and then I was able to snap a ring and squeeze it tight enough that it stayed in place. So be careful with your cores. You can drop your pins out the bottom. Just be careful and keep track of all your parts. This is how much hardware I'm carrying around, so I'm using half the rivets. Once I get the rivets out, I'm just cleaning them up off the end and easing them over on the ends there so that I can reuse some of them and make it look nice on the 4 corners where you can't see anything. Then I will use the screws, but I don't want to use the screws if I don't have to. So generally it looks nice like this one here. This one, you can see the core doesn't stick out the bottom at all. So I used flatheads countersunk in and left the nuts on top. With the core sticking out on the bottom of these ones, you know, it just wasn't worth it. So I left the nuts on bottom. I used pan heads on top so that they look more like the rivets. And yeah, there you go. So once I figured out where I was going to cut, what I wanted to cut, how I basically would do this, why is it not letting me flip, is I would screw everything together that has the same cut. So disassemble this. Oh, sorry. Okay, so lay everything out. Mark where you're going to have the wide cuts, where you're going to have just individual skinny cuts. If you have skinny cuts, you got to make sure there's going to be rivets to hold the middle metal together. Make sure that you're not going to have parts that'll fall out. If you need to, completely color out on the top of the scale where it's going to disappear when you make your 2 cuts. See if it's going to work. Try to help you troubleshoot some areas. But all I do is I take all my wide cut pieces and I would screw them together with some temporary screws. Take all my skinny cut pieces, screw those together, and cut them all at the same time with a cutting wheel. After I use a cutting wheel to cut them and get them out of there, you can see there I got it open. You can clean it up. Now before I unscrew it, I'll file up and get it all cleaned up so that your edges look nice and clean. Sorry, I don't know why this is not flipping properly. So you can see there, you can file your edges before you unscrew it. Keeps everything nice and straight. You can see that's much cleaner than a Dremel cutting wheel alone. So it really helps out. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Get them looking clean with the file. See the other side there, and then you can unscrew these, get them all taken apart, cleaned up, and then lay your, oh my gosh. See, you got everything together. Nice and pretty. Then you can lay everything out and get it clean. Now when it comes to reassembly, this is the hard part. I ended up building several different jigs here. So got my tri-square to mark how far I'm cutting in on each piece. So when I mark, get each bundle screwed together in their respective groups, I can mark them all together at the same time with the scribe. and then they all got the same marks. You can see here I've got one of these so that I can punch my rivets out. And then I've got a couple different versions of these. Now what this happens to do is it happens to hold that shackle at the exact height needed, and then I can just start stacking my plates. There's a little play, I'd have to tap the shackle down in there. But then I can start stacking my plates on top of there, and you can see I used the 4 rivets in the middle to keep everything together because I had to stack my plates, then drop my ball bearings, so stack my plates so I can drop my ball bearings in, stack a bit more so I can drop the actuator in, stack a bit more so I can wind the spring on the actuator. Then I have to keep tension on the entire stack or the spring's gonna fly out. So then I can continue to stack on top of there. Once I get to the very end, you can put your core in, and don't forget your shackle spring. I've done it so many times I've left that out. I have to take that bottom plate off just to put that stupid spring back in. But if you can kind of stack it like this in a jig, then you can hold it together tight and pull the whole thing out and put the screws in it. You can also have 1 or 2 screws on either corner, long screws, temporary screws, whatever. Once you get it pulled out, you can put the permanent bottom 2 screws on the side, take the other 2 out, and then replace those ones. In the event that you do have to cut your screws, use a sacrificial nut. Cut it, then take that nut off, put it on the next one, cut it so that you're not cutting your final nut that goes on there, and you can keep everything looking nice and pretty. Now, I know it's kind of a lot, and there's a whole lot to it, and I can't really explain everything, but this is kind of how I go about it. You're going to kind of have to figure a lot of that out on your own. How much material can you take out? I tried to take out the middle right here on the actuators, like I did on this one up here. Almost the entire actuator is exposed, but these master locks were so sloppy, actuator falls out, doesn't work. The whole thing fell apart. When it comes to that bottom piece, after I get my cutout behind there, I'd screw just the bottom piece together. You can slide your plastic on there. Then I took a Dremel milling bit and just milled out the section that was exposed. Well, yeah, where's the other one? And first one I did with a... oh my gosh. First one I did with a knife. Didn't come out too well. So the second one I did with my Dremel. I did slip once, whoops, but it still turned out much better, and I just haven't cleaned it up. Just take a hot iron to that plastic to clean it up really quick. And then so on this one here I used a Dremel milling bit as well. Worked much better. So it tends to work really well on that plastic. Then you got that notched out, and you can put that all on there, and everything looks pretty. I think I'm probably going to do something similar to that with this and this shield here, but I didn't know how that milling was going to work, and I wasn't going to do it on a discontinued expensive lock, so I didn't want to, mess it up. So we'll probably have to lay out where to notch on that one and notch the whole thing out and see if we can leave that slit on top and still see everything inside. Anyway, it's kind of fun. You can make a cheap lock look really cool. So you got your number 5, number 1. The number 3 is on the way. I just left it partial so that I could show you exactly the steps on the drilling, what it looks like as you're taking the thing apart, keeping things in order. Then you're going to put it together and figure out where you're going to cut, and then mark it with a marker. The red is where I do not cut, so those were warnings. Stay away from those ones. And then you can pull it apart, put the pieces together respectively, make your cuts, clean, file them clean, and you're good. If you have a hacksaw, you could just cut each plate individually if you scribed your lines well. Stay off your line, and then you can basically screw it all together. Take your file, clean it up really nice, and you can still have the same results. Just a little bit more work. On these ends, I did start by cutting the rivets with the Dremel, but it's too easy to slip and nick your bottom. So I end up just filing these bottom rivets down till they're to this point here. You can see I nicked the tape once, so that was close enough. I stopped at that point. You could tape the whole thing except for the rivets, but that's bigger pain than it needs to be. And then once you get that bottom plate off, you can get rid of all of that, and you won't have a bunch of shavings down inside your core. I hope that helps. It's a whole lot of information and a whole lot of boring nothing, because I really didn't do anything other than just show you my work. So what to expect. Now, as far as, I don't know foreign and how much it varies by state. 3-inch all thread is almost $2. The 6-inch all thread is just over $3, so you can cut that in half if you wanted. My stainless steel 440 nuts are about 50 cents a piece. The screws are between 70 cents and $1.50 a piece. Once again, I'm doing stainless steel, so everything looks really nice. And then pan head and flat heads are pretty much roughly the same price. So if you want to do your flat heads on the bottom here, or your pan heads here on top, totally up to you. I hope this helps. If you guys have any questions, please reach out to me. I love you guys all. You great community. I'm sorry I've been lacking. This took a whole lot to put together, a whole lot of money, a whole lot of time and effort. So anyway, once again, like I said, if I did a good job, I didn't bore you too much, don't forget, hit that thumbs up and share with your friends. And don't forget, be kind to everybody. Let's make everything, make it a good one. We never know how long we're going to be here, and be kind to each other. Thanks. Have a great day. Appreciate all your support. And once again, reach out to me on Discord or in the comments if you have any questions concerning this at all. Appreciate you all. Have a great one.